Hi friends, Father Frank Pavone here, National Director of Priests for Life. Welcome to our Pro-Life MAGA broadcast. 2 times every day, 10 in the morning, 9 o'clock at night. We are coming to you with these programs to prepare you for this key election, to help you prepare others. Brothers and sisters, we need your help to reach the people that we cannot reach on our own. We need your help to convey to others the information we're conveying to you during these broadcasts, and we're very grateful for your time, your attention, your commitment to work with us to reach and mobilize voters, to educate them and to turn them out for what is indeed the most important midterm elections that we've ever seen. Because think about it, if you voted and you worked hard 2 years ago to get President Trump and the Republican leadership into office, well then you don't want that work to have been wasted or half wasted, because although we made tremendous progress these first 2 years, we need to continue that progress the next 2 years, and it'll happen only if the president has a Congress that will send to him the kind of legislation he can sign, will confirm for him the kind of excellent judges he will appoint, and that will continue the work of making America great again. He's been doing tremendous rallies all over the country that we urge you to watch, because those rallies summarize the progress that has been made, cast the vision for more progress that will be made if we turn out for this election, and talk about the dangers of electing Democrats into power. We have been, in our own effort here at ProLifeMaga.com, creating these programs to help you understand various facets of the election. And today we're going to talk about voter guides, the different types of voter guides that exist, where you can find them, and how you can use them. That's the simple topic of today's program. Now, the subsequent program that we do is going to focus on ways that you find information about the candidates. Now, obviously, that intersects with this program now, because on the voter guides, you're going to see information about the candidates. But we're looking at this from 2 different angles. Today, it's what are the different types of voter guides and how can you use them? And then the next program will be about, well, if I need to find information about where a specific candidate stands, how do I find that out? And that'll intersect with the voter guides, but we'll show you other ways of managing that question too. So stick with us, take some notes, share this with others, and let's make some progress for this election. All right, let's talk about voter guides. Now, there are various, first of all, let me make a distinction here between a voter guide. What is a voter guide? It's going to be a document. It's going to perhaps be a web page. It's going to perhaps be a questionnaire. But one way or another, it's a resource that tells you where does a candidate stand on a particular issue, okay? And that is a voter guide. It's going to obviously name names, and in a particular race it's going to say John Smith is running against Jane Doe, and here's where they stand on this issue, that issue, or a whole range of issues. That's a voter guide, and that's what we're talking about here today. Now, you also have various other forms of voter education materials. You'll see that phrase in various places. Voter education materials go beyond what I strictly define just now as a voter guide. Voter education materials very often are more general. As a matter of fact, you could consider the U.S. Bishop's document, Living the Gospel of Life, as voter education material in the sense that it educates people about how they make voting decisions. The bishops in that document tell us that voting is an opportunity to advance the culture of life, that we have to take into account, first of all, the most vulnerable, that we have to begin with a commitment never to kill the innocent, that abortion and euthanasia attack the foundation of all our other rights. This is all voter education, but it's not, technically speaking, a voter guide. Now, this distinction is important, as we will see as we go along here. But just to give you a perspective here, we are talking about the specific voter guides showing you where candidates stand. Now, the reason that there are different kinds of voter guides is that there are different kinds of organizations under the tax code of the United States, and that tax code determines the boundaries of how those organizations can invest their money for their activities. And so you end up having voter guides categorized according to the type of entity that you are talking about. And I'm going to distinguish just three of them, okay? C3, C4, and PAC. What are these? Okay. Your church and organizations that you belong to or associate with, like Priests for Life, most of the pro-life organizations, charitable groups, are organized as C3. What these are educational groups. Their focus is education. And they may not explicitly endorse candidates. Now, we did a whole program the other day speaking about where those boundary lines really are. You can refer to that program for more details. But C3 groups, when it comes to politics, the material that they give out has to be neutral. We'll explain what that means. C4, on the other hand, these are lobbying groups, and they can be somewhat more explicit about their advocacy of a particular candidate on a specific issue. And then a PAC is a political action committee. The very purpose of that kind of a group is to advocate for a particular candidate. So they're going to come right out and say, vote for John Smith, vote for Jane Doe. Okay, so keep in mind, because now I'm going to show you voter guides that pertain to each of these groups. Now, let me make an overall point before I even show you the voter guide. As a private citizen, you can use any of this material any way you want. You personally want to give it out to people? You're a citizen of the United States. You can do what you want. You want to put it on your website. You want to send it out on your email. You want to put it on your social media. As an individual, you can use any of the material that I'm going to show you. You can create your own, advocating as explicitly as you want for the election or defeat of a particular candidate. All this refers to is what an organization can do, how an organization can spend its funds. So, for example, the first voter guides I'm going to show you are of the type of C3, and those can be used by churches. And by other organizations that are structured in the same way. So let's look at some voter guides, and I'm going to actually refer to an old one here, only because I just want to show you the characteristics of these guides. The first one I want to show you is one that Priests for Life made back in the presidential race of 2012, when Barack Obama was running for re-election against Mitt Romney. And the reason I want to show you this is it is constructed as a C3 voter guide, which means this. Number one, the information that it presents is neutral. So it presents where the candidates stand on the issues, but it doesn't indicate favor towards one or another. So you see here, it has the candidate's name, it has the issue, it has a quote from them as to where they stand about the issue, but nowhere on that page do you see a green check mark or a thumbs up or a thumbs down or a smiley face and a frowning face or a vote for this person and not for that person. You don't see any of that anywhere on this guide. That's one of the things that makes it a C3 guide, again, that churches can use. The other distinction is, you notice how many issues we have on there? On the first page, there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. On the second page, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12. There are a dozen different issues, everything from abortion to education, vouchers, immigration, religious liberty, health care, and so forth. And that's one of the characteristics of a C3 voter guide, is that it covers a wide range of issues. Now, some people go overboard and they think a wide range of issues means you have to publish a book. It doesn't. But some people go overboard, and some organizations and churches, they'll create a whole book, and we believe in making things a little bit more practical and easy as long as they're covering, again, a range of issues. So let me give you another example of a C3 voter guide, and that is one that is created by the Christian Coalition. Now, a little bit later in this program, we're going to show you how to get a bunch of these voter guides from the Christian Coalition website, but that'll be in a little bit. Look at this one. Now, this happens to be the one that they created for the Florida U.S. Senate race between Rick Scott and Bill Nelson. Now, again, just like the one I showed you a moment ago, it shows the candidates, it shows their positions on a wide range of issues, but it doesn't show any preference. So a person who's in favor of a pro-abortion Democrat could use this just as much as a person who's in favor of a pro-life Republican. It simply gives the information on where those candidates stand, and the voter can decide their own preference as to whom they want to elect. Now, let's go into the C4 guides, and you'll notice a subtle difference. Let me begin by showing you the Michigan Senate race between John James and Debbie Stabenow. This is a C4 voter guide created by National Right to Life, and Right to Life of Michigan is their state affiliate up there. I was just up there a couple of times in the recent weeks giving some talks. Now, what do you notice about this one? You see it has, again, the candidates' names, but notice, the reason this is a C4 guide, this is used by lobbying organizations. Again, it can be used by you as a private citizen any way that you please. But this is a C4 guide because, first of all, you notice that the range of issues is smaller. There's not a whole wide range of different issues. It's basically talking here about, as the question at the top says, where do the candidates stand on life? And specifically, you see a picture of a baby up there, and the quote from Scripture at the top, I set before you life and death. And of course, that verse goes on to say, choose life. The baby is there. Where do the candidates stand on life? So it's more of a focus. It's more of a narrow focus, a specific focus on abortion and abortion-related topics, and shows the positions of the candidates. But it doesn't only show the positions of the candidates, but you see it's more evaluative, because as it says in the first line there on John James is pro-life. So that's more, it's not, this is not an explicit endorsement. It's not saying vote for this person, but it is indicating one is better than the other. First of all, we're narrowing it down to the question of abortion, and we're using this phrase, pro-life. So this is a C4 piece. Another example, look at the next one, the Montana Senate race between Matt Rosendale and John Tester. Again, you see the same format. Where do the candidates stand on life? And then it says specifically Matt Rosendale is pro-life. And then it only has a few different issues there, all related to the question of abortion. Those are so-called C4 voter guides, a little bit more explicit. Then we come to the PAC, the Political Action Committee, and I want to show you first a list. One of the things that political action committees, such as the one from National Right to Life, which is the source of what I'm showing you, will provide a guide that says, here are the pro-life candidates in this particular state. Now, we're going to show you in a minute where you can find these, but right now we're just looking at what makes these voter guides different from one another. And you see here there's a list, vote pro-life. See, now it's just explicitly saying to the voter, vote pro-life. Don't vote pro-abortion. Vote pro-life. And what that means is, in the state of Missouri, which is this guide I'm showing you now, what that means is these are the people you want to vote for because they're pro-life. So as you see what it says, it takes the U.S. House of Representatives and it gives in the various districts the pro-life candidates, And then over on the right-hand side of the page, it shows the pro-life candidate for the U.S. Senate race in Missouri. And then notice the guide says, vote like life depends on it, because it does. And then you'll notice on the bottom of the guide, it says, paid for by National Right to Life PAC. The Political Action Committee put this together because they're explicitly advocating for particular candidates who are pro-life, and that makes the difference between this voter guide and the others that I showed you. Let me show you a second Political Action Committee voter guide, and right away you'll see the difference between this and the ones that are neutral. This one is in the Montana Senate race, and it is a PAC guide that shows Matt Rosendale running against John Tester, and look what it says. The Democrats want you to pay for abortion on demand. Please stop them. The Democrat Party wants to change the law so that your tax dollars will pay for abortion on demand. And then you notice, unlike the other voter guides that showed the two candidates and did not show any preference, look at this one. There's a red check mark next to Matt Rosendale, the pro-life candidate. No check mark next to John Tester. And notice on each point that is made about candidate Matt Rosendale, there's a little red heart on the left-hand side. And then at the bottom, again, very explicit, electing John Tester would mean more babies die, paid for with your tax dollars. Vote pro-life November 6th. Matt Rosendale for U.S. Senate. That's about as explicit as you can get. And this shows you very clearly the difference between a Political Action Committee guide and the other types of voter guides. Now again, as an individual citizen, you can use all of these things. And we're going to talk a little bit more here about where you can find them and what and how you can use them. But once again, okay, 3 different types of guides. So one of the things here is that it oversimplifies things. If a pastor, for example, tells you, oh, we can't distribute any voter guides. Not true. Depends what kind of voter guide you're talking about. Or if an organization says, oh, well, we're not a political group. You don't have to be a political group to hand out a C3 voter guide. You got to be a political group if the group itself is going to pay for handing out political action voter guides like these last ones I showed you. But you don't have to be a political group or have any special status in order to as a group or even as a church, use a C3 voter guide. Some people they're making up laws that don't exist. When they say, oh, we can't use any voter guides. And this is where, again, it's not so simple as when sometimes people say, oh, well, we can't name names. You see, sometimes people, maybe they own radio stations or that are organized under the C3 status, or again, a church or a pastor in the church, oh, we can't name names. Well, yes, you can. It depends what you're saying about the names. If you're saying, well, John Smith and Jane Doe are running in this election, here are their positions on a wide range of issues, you can certainly name names. It's completely legitimate. And that's what a C3 educational voter guide is. By the way, when it comes to churches, why wouldn't we want to equip people with the information they need to go out and make a difference in the elections? Why wouldn't we want to equip them with that information? Why do we have to keep them in the dark? Why do we have to be afraid? It's perfectly legitimate. So I wanted to show you these different types of voter guides. Now, where do we go to find this information? I'm going to show you 2 ways to go to a page that we have created to guide you through finding these various voter guides. Because friends, now's the time to distribute them. Whether you're sending people a link in your email or putting a link out on social media or printing out copies and spreading them around, now's the time. These next few days before Election Day, now is the time to do this. First of all, we've set up a special website called votinginfo.org. Goes directly to the page I'm about to show you. Another way you can go to it is at prolifevote.com. And let's go there. We'll show you that page. That's our main election page. And there's many different blue buttons at the top. They show you a wealth of information And friends, I need to urge you, take some time between now and Election Day, preferably today, where you can sit down with that website and go through every link, because you're going to be way well prepared for this election and help many others to be prepared also. But let's just look at one thing right now, prolifevote.com, and one of those blue buttons in the lower left-hand column says candidate information. That's where we're going to go, and we're going to show you just some of the things on that page. Candidate information. That's the same page that this domain, votinginfo.org, takes you to directly. What do you find on that page? First of all, I make some introductory remarks, but if you go down to one of the links, one of the first links that appears, ivoterguide.com, that is a very detailed place to get information about candidates in your own state, in the races that are going on there. It's excellent. Now on the next program, tomorrow's program, I'll go into that in a whole lot more detail. But for now, I just want to show you where it is. ivoterguide.com is going to give you all kinds of information on all kinds of races at various different levels of the election, of the government. It's going to show you things not only like where they stand on different issues, but even things like who donated to them, who endorsed them, who did they donate to. You can really get a lot of information about the candidates at ivoterguide.com. So we have that as one of the first links in our voter guide page, and we'll go into, again, tomorrow we'll be talking more about how do I find out about a specific candidate. Right now I'm just showing you in general. Now, secondly, let's look at the next link, the National Right to Life Committee. They are our good friends, strong allies, close colleagues. We work with them in many different ways. And they have a website. Actually, it's very similar to ours, except with the word "the" in front of it. They have the website, theprolifevote.com. Let's go there. Let's click on that link for the National Right to Life Committee's political guide page, theprolifevote.com. I want you to notice the tabs on the front, on the top of the page, because these actually now are going to show you where I got those voter guides that I showed you a moment ago that give the distinction between the C4 and the PAC. So on the top, you will see a few different tabs. One of them is called Comparisons. So you go to the Comparisons tab first, and you'll be able to choose whatever state you want to look at, the state you live in, presumably. And these then will show you the voter guides that are the C4 voter guides. In other words, the ones that are, they're not the ones for the churches, but neither are they the political action groups. These are for lobbying organizations. But again, you as a citizen can use them whatever way you want. So at the tab marked Comparisons, you'll find the C4 voter guides. They give you the positions of the candidates on pro-life related issues, and are in that sense more narrowly, specifically focused to what we are talking about in this pro-life movement. Good answer to the question, well, who are the pro-life candidates? That's where you find these comparison pieces. Now, let's go back to theprolifevote.com, and let's look at the tabs at the top. Next to Comparisons, you'll see another tab that says Endorsements. So let's go to that one. When you go to the Endorsements tab, you'll again be able to choose the state you want to look up. And there you will find the Political Action Committee voter guides. There you will find the guides where you have an explicit endorsement, a check mark, a red heart, this is your guy, this is your girl, this is the one that you got to vote for. These are the Political Action Endorsement Guides. Again, covers the whole country. Find whatever you want there. That's the Endorsements tab. And then there's a third tab that I want to point out, and that says the lists of pro-life candidates. When it says pro-life candidates, what it means is whichever state you want, you will find, as I've shown you already, just a list of the names. These are the pro-life candidates in the House and senatorial races of that state. And so you can see examples there at the tab that says pro-life candidates. So this is what you find, and I thank our friends at National Right to Life for putting this together, theprolifevote.com. Use those different tabs. Now, not only for your own use in your particular neck of the woods, but also to send this to relatives, friends, and others that you know in other states. They may not be aware of this. Again, like I said at the outset, we really need you to help us reach the people we can't reach on our own. Could you spread this information? Take these links. You know someone that lives in Montana. You know someone that lives in Florida. You know someone that lives in Arkansas. And you're in a different state. But now that you know this and all this information, take those links and start pushing them out there to these other folks that are not watching this program. You are our bridge to those people to get them well informed about the pro-life candidates. Okay, now let's go back to our page about candidate information that we got to either from votinginfo.org or from prolifevote.com, and then click on the blue candidate information button. The more times you do this, the easier it'll become. And let's continue scrolling down this page about candidate information. I've got various explanations and links there. You see I have an explanation of what we just looked at under the prolifevote.com. And then there's a paragraph that starts off, the Christian Coalition provides nonpartisan C3 friendly voter guides for use by churches, C3 educational groups, and private citizens who can use anything they want for the 2018 elections for U.S. Senate and U.S. House in select states. Select states. So they're not necessarily looking at all 50 states. There's certain groups, when they provide voter guides, they're providing voter guides for races that they may be particularly involved in or that they select according to their own criteria. And maybe sometimes some groups will. And then this is, again, just a question of what resources people have to allocate to creating these voter guides in the first place, because it is a big process to create these voter guides. There are rules for the groups when they do this. There are certain kinds of questionnaires that you send out to the candidates in the campaigns, and sometimes they don't respond. So it's, there's a lot of work behind the scenes to put these guides together. And so they provide for select states. But you see the link right there. Let's go to that link. And again, you'll see that that's a place where you can choose the state that they offer. And it is an opportunity to find out these guides. You can bring these to your pastor. In fact, get the one from your state, if your state is listed there, and bring it to church this weekend. And ask permission it's a C3 guide. Then now Christian Coalition has a letter to the pastors. Back on our page, the candidate information page, we have a link directly to the letter for pastors that the Christian Coalition has prepared, which tells them you can use these guides, it's perfectly okay, and it will be helpful to your congregation. There are two other links there that I just want to show you briefly. One is FRC Action. Again, our friends and colleagues at the Family Research Council have put together this link. It's frcaction.org/scorecard. These are scorecards. This is for candidates who have already been in office. For example, representatives who have served at least one term in Congress and now are asking for re-election. Well, the scorecard says, how did they do? How did they score? In other words, how did they vote on matters of importance to us as pro-life people, as people who are concerned about values issues and conservative values and so forth. frcaction.org/scorecard. You can get familiar with that page, follow the different links, and it will show you how different people in different races scored again, from the perspective of pro-life, pro-family, pro-freedom, conservative values. Likewise, another link we have there on our candidates page is a link produced by the Family Policy Alliance. Now, this was formerly known as Citizen Link or Focus on the Family Action. And we actually share some office space with Focus on the Family Washington Outreach there in D.C. That link there to the Family Policy Alliance also shows you various state and federal voter guides that you can examine and use. This is where you find all these various types of guides. Once again, a simple direct link to that page that we've been looking at that we produced is votinginfo.org. Not to be confused with votinginfo.net, which goes directly to the voter guide, the C3 voter guide, comparing the parties. The party comparison is at votinginfo.net. That's the comparison of the positions of the Republican and Democrat parties. Votinginfo.org gives you this broader set of guidelines going to many other kinds of voter guides, many of which are prepared by our friends in other organizations. Now I want to speak to you, brothers and sisters, about, so what I've answered so far is the question of what are the different types of guides and where do you find them? That's what we've gone through so far. Now I want to answer the question, how can you use them? How can you use them? First of all, anyone you know to whom you want to give this kind of voter guide information, it's a free country, you can give it to them. Any of those types of voter guides, you as an individual can disseminate them. All of these places where I've shown you, you can copy and paste, download and print the information. You have complete and full permission to do that. And you can hand these things out at events, groups that you might be going to over the next few days, going to church, obviously, on Sunday if you're going to be seeing different people. Hey, I have something for you. Citizen to citizen, the sky's the limit. Electronically, obviously, everything we've shown you just now, you're reaching by means of a web page. Download the information. Send it to people via email. Send them the links or send them the guide itself as an attachment. Post it on your social media. Now, this is crucially important. I'm not exaggerating when I tell you that the election can be decided, and many races can be decided, by what you decide right now to do to spread this information. I mean, literally, some races, again, are won by a couple of hundred votes. You don't think that if all the people watching this right now took these voter guides, linked to them on their Twitter, on their Instagram, on their Facebook, Pinterest, whatever kind of social media platforms they have, and get this out to all the different friends and followers that they have, you don't think that's going to generate a few hundred votes in some districts? Of course it will. Of course it will. Especially if you know how to target people on Facebook. You can boost your post and you can zero in on specific congressional districts. I mean, even if they're complete strangers, post it on there. And of course, who's going to see it depends on all your settings that you have on your social media platforms. But the point is, you've got it at your fingertips to reach a lot of people with this information. And so that's why I'm talking to you now, to urge you to do that. Being a faithful citizen doesn't only mean we cast our vote, doesn't only mean we inform ourselves. It means we inform others and we get them casting their vote too. These are some of the ways you can use this information. Put the links in emails, put the links in social media, put the links on websites that you may have or that your organizations may have. And again, if your organization is a C3 group, like most of us are, those C3 voter guides, like the ones at Christian Coalition, perfectly legitimate to use. Now, let me go into another area, because this weekend coming up, sometimes I call it National Get Kicked Out of the Church Parking Lot Sunday. Many of you take to the streets. Maybe you do this in conjunction with local organizations that produce these voter guides. Many of you will just do it on your own, but many people are distributing voter guides, and a lot of times they distribute the guides in the parking lots of churches. Now, why do they target the parking lots of churches? Well, for a very simple reason, that the people who are going to church tend to be pro-life. They tend to be sympathetic to candidates who are running on a pro-life, pro-marriage, pro-family, pro-freedom platform, and that happens to be the Republican platform. But the point is that it's a target audience. It's a fruitful audience. So people can go, and whether the cars are on the streets or they may go into the parking lot and put these flyers on there. And a lot of times the pastors, well, they've got the wrong idea in their minds about all this. I mean, we're not asking them to organize this activity, although they are perfectly free to take a C3 voter guide and put it in the parish bulletin, put it on the parish website, distribute it at Mass this weekend or other services. That's perfectly legitimate if it's a C3 voter guide. And but let's talk about when other folks, maybe some of you, are handing out the flyers in the church parking lot. Should the church chase you out? And the answer to that question is absolutely not. And they shouldn't think that they have to chase you out, because they're not going to get in any legal trouble. Now, they might be concerned about complaints from parishioners that don't like the material on their car. Well, they've got to deal with that. People can complain about anything at any time. It's not up to us to stop complaints. But the question of whether or not they're going to get into any legal trouble from not doing anything and not chasing you out, well, we've got a legal letter that deals with that, and I actually want to read parts of this letter to you. Where can you find this? Again, go to prolifevote.com. That's our main election site, prolifevote.com. And when you scroll all the way down the page and you look on the right-hand section, you're going to see a section of links called Legal Guidance. Let's go there. And on Legal Guidance, one of the links says, please don't throw people out of the church parking lot. Okay, so this is directed to our friends in the clergy. You know, be concerned about some other things. Don't worry about the good people out there putting literature on the cars in the parking lot. You got other things to be concerned about. This is actually a legal letter from the nation's top expert in this area of the law, our friend and colleague, James Bopp Jr. In answer to a request we made some years ago to clarify this point, let me actually read this letter for you. You can download this, you can print it out, you can distribute it, you can show it to whoever you want to show it to. You can have it with you if you're doing this distribution in the parking lot. Let me read the letter. Dear Father Pavone, you have requested our opinion on whether pastors may permit distribution by others of candidate political statements in their church parking lot. And notice, we're not even talking here about C3 voter guides. We're talking about the explicit endorsement PAC material. He says there are two issues here. First, it is our opinion that the distribution of campaign material by others in the church parking lot will not jeopardize the church's tax-exempt status. The mere permission of distribution of campaign materials by others in the church parking lot is not regulated by the Internal Revenue Code. The code and its regulations are designed to limit only the activities and expenditures of nonprofit organizations. Distribution of campaign material by others outdoors in a public parking lot is not an activity or expenditure of the church. Thus, the distribution of campaign materials by others in the church parking lot will not jeopardize the church's tax-exempt status. Now let me add another couple of exclamation points to that. It's not only true because of what Mr. Bopp explains here, it's also true because President Trump has made it crystal clear by an executive order a year and a half ago that the federal government, including the IRS, is directed not to punish churches by threatening the loss of their tax exemption for speaking their mind regarding politics. And here, it's not even the church speaking. It's somebody else doing it. But the church is afraid, they're going to get poisoned somehow, or they're going to get roped into some legal conflict with the IRS. They are not. I repeat, they are not. They are not. It's not going to happen. It was never going to happen in the first place, but now even more so because the president has directed the IRS, don't touch the churches. Leave them alone, let them speak their mind. So, this fear, and by the way, it's never happened. No church has ever gotten its tax exemption yanked because of political activity. Never happened. Even the cases where there's been complaints, it never happened. They didn't lose their tax exempt status. Now, let's go on with the letter. Second, there is our opinion that in most states there are state court decisions holding that such activity is protected by the First Amendment or the state constitution, and therefore the church will suffer no adverse consequences as a result of this activity. Let's say here, okay, well, that is what Bopp says, and at the very end he says, by the way, they cannot prohibit such distributions because the parking lots are open to the public. So it would be like saying, hey, the people that come into our parking lot, you can park there if you want to come to church, but you can't talk to your fellow parishioner in the parking lot about the elections. That would be absurd, right? Obviously contrary to their free speech rights. Now, going back to prolifevote.com and the legal guidelines section, there's another link that we have placed there. That's the last link in the legal guidelines section, talking about you distributing material of whatever kind you want on the public sidewalk next to the church. Now, a lot of times pastors will be, they'll be very sensitive about people going into their parking lot. But if you're standing on the public sidewalk, I've got news for the pastors and for you. That sidewalk belongs to you, the citizens. A public sidewalk, even if it adjoins, goes right up to the door of a church, the public sidewalk is not under the jurisdiction of that church, that pastor, or that bishop. It is a public sidewalk in the United States of America, and it belongs to you, the citizens, the taxpayers. That is the perfect forum for First Amendment activity, freedom of speech. I can stand on any sidewalk, any public sidewalk, in front of any church in America and preach whatever sermon I want. You can stand on any public sidewalk anywhere in America, even if it's right up against the church, and you can distribute any kind of material as you want. We can say what we want. That's freedom of speech. We can hand people what we want. That's freedom of speech. And what we're saying is, we want to encourage people to do that this weekend. If the pastor is too afraid or too uninformed about the law to distribute one of those excellent C3 voter guides that the Christian Coalition produces and that I showed you where to find, if he's too afraid or too ignorant of the law to distribute the party comparison piece that I showed you where to find at votinginfo.net, well, you may have to do it for him out on the public sidewalk. He cannot and must not interfere with your right to do that. The law is 100% on your side. And that's the link I want to show you now. It's a legal memorandum. Again, it's the last link on the legal guidelines section at prolifevote.com. And it's a memorandum our attorneys have put together for us. Our attorneys are the American Freedom Law Center. Rob Muse. These are the lawyers, by the way, who led us all the way up to the Supreme Court and to victory against that HHS mandate of Obama that Priests for Life fought since 2012 and won victory on just recently. This memorandum has to do with the project of distributing literature on the public sidewalks. Now let me just read some of this. Once again, Priests for Life is calling on pro-lifers around the country to participate in a monumentally important election, which will in large measure determine the direction our nation takes on fundamental matters of public policy and the directions of our courts. As Americans, we are blessed to have the opportunity to elect our leaders, and we are called by our Christian discipleship to exercise that responsibility in an active and informed way. Part of that exercise of citizenship involves being informed about the positions that the candidates and their parties take, and to reach out to our fellow citizens, our fellow believers, and equip them with the information that will help them make an informed voting decision. To that end, Priests for Life is inviting pro-lifers to take part in a voter education project. Involves distributing literature that will provide information about the candidates and the parties, and when appropriate, discussing the issues with willing listeners. The literature will contain important voting information, and the project participants will peacefully distribute this information and engage willing passers-by on public property adjacent to surrounding churches throughout the country. No one involved in the project will obstruct or otherwise hinder anyone from using the public rights of way, nor will they engage in any harassing, threatening, boisterous, or otherwise disruptive conduct while engaging in project activities. In other words, we're not going to listen to the advice of Hillary Clinton, Maxine Waters, or Cory Booker as far as how you handle public discourse when you are in the political season. This legal memorandum, it goes on, sets forth the constitutional rights of pro-lifers to engage in the project. So, legal analysis. Point number one, distributing literature on voting issues is fully protected by the First Amendment. Just that initial quote from a Supreme Court case. Leafleting and commenting on matters of public concern are classic forms of speech that lie at the heart of the First Amendment. And speech in public areas is at its most protected on public sidewalks, a prototypical example of a traditional public forum. And then it goes on with all kinds of paragraphs and citations, as you can see, of other cases. And then, point number two in bold font, the First Amendment right to distribute literature is at its zenith when exercised in the traditional public fora, and those include the public streets and sidewalks adjacent to churches across the United States. In the last page, next to the last paragraph, if the paragraph right before the conclusion, it says there is no exception to this long-standing rule for public streets and sidewalks adjacent to church property. Per the U.S. Supreme Court, the streets are natural and proper places for the dissemination of information and opinion, and one is not to have the exercise of his liberty of expression and appropriate pledges abridged on the plea that it may not be exercised in some other place. Bottom line, nobody can stop you. And in fact, if they try, they may be breaking the law. And that's where the conclusion, let me just read the concluding paragraph here. In the final analysis, the project's activities on the public streets and sidewalks adjacent to churches are fully protected by the free speech and free exercise clauses of the First Amendment. There is no basis to argue otherwise. Moreover, if police officers or other government officials interfere with the project, they could be liable for violating the participants' civil rights under 42 U.S. Code Section 1983. Any private party that conspires with government officials, even if they are a pastor, by the way, any private party that conspires with government officials to interfere with the project could also face potential civil liability. See Dennis v. Sparks holding that private parties conspiring with a government official were acting under color of state law for purposes of a civil conspiracy claim brought pursuant to 42 U.S. Code Section 1983. The point is, show this letter to those who try to stop you from giving out information on the public sidewalks. And you know what some people are doing? They're planning for this Sunday to go out and distribute literature near churches on the public sidewalk. And they're sending this letter in advance to the pastor and to the local police department. So that then in case the church calls the police on them, the police will say, yeah, we know they're there too, and you can't stop them. They're exercising their First Amendment rights. So we wanted to make that letter available to you, friends. You know, it's ridiculously frustrating and difficult to understand at times why we wouldn't be getting the encouragement and the cheering of our religious leaders to help us educate our fellow citizens rather than their obstruction. So that is my message to you today about voter guides. And brothers and sisters, once again, the simplest place to go for all of this, votinginfo.org. Where do you find the information on the candidates? Where do you find links to voter guides? You'll see it all there. Please use it. Please use it. So now I want to invite you to pray with me, and we're going to say the election prayer at electionprayer.com. And then we'll show you a few little video clips to conclude. But this election prayer, my friends, again, the churches can promote this, you can promote this. Let's go all out in these next few days, urging people to pray for victory in these elections. And would you pray with me right now? In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit, amen. O God, we acknowledge you today as Lord, not only of individuals, but of nations and governments. We thank you for the privilege of being able to organize ourselves politically and of knowing that political loyalty does not have to mean disloyalty to you. We thank you for your law, which our founding fathers acknowledged and recognized as higher than any human law. We thank you for the opportunity that this election year puts before us to exercise our solemn duty not only to vote, but to influence countless others to vote and to vote correctly. Lord, we pray that your people may be awakened. Let them realize that while politics is not their salvation, their response to you requires that they be politically active. Awaken your people to know that they are not called to be a sect fleeing the world, but rather a community of faith renewing the world. Awaken them that the same hands lifted up to you in prayer are the hands that pull the lever in the voting booth. That the same eyes that read your word are the eyes that read the names on the ballot, and that they do not cease to be Christians when they enter the voting booth. Awaken your people to a commitment to justice, to the sanctity of marriage and the family, to the dignity of each individual human life, and to the truth that human rights begin when human lives begin and not one moment later. Lord, we rejoice today that we are citizens of your kingdom. May that make us all the more committed to being faithful citizens on earth. We pray through Jesus Christ, our Lord. Amen. Well, friends, let me just get something over here on the set. Have you got one of these? Make America Great Again. A great nation is one that acknowledges the freedom of its citizens to communicate with one another. A great nation is an informed nation. A great nation consists of voters that go into the voting booth knowing full well where the candidates stand. A great nation is one in which we affirm life, in which we keep the courts limited to what their proper constitutional role is and not let them take over the role of the lawmaking bodies. A great nation is one that is filled with patriots who put their country first, who know how to protect themselves and their fellow citizens, and who are grateful to God, knowing that our rights come from Him and not from some court or Congress or king. That's a great nation. And we are banding together to make America great again. I want to ask you to watch President Trump's rallies. We've got a link also on our page of prolifevote.com where you can see the rallies that he's having now each day until the election, and we have the links to all the past ones, because they lay out the vision of the progress that we've made, the dangers that we face in this election, and the opportunities that we have for future progress. Watch them and get others to watch them. It'll motivate you to get out to vote and to get many others to vote as well. Well, God bless you. Thanks for joining me. We'll be back 9 p.m. tonight and each night, 10 a.m. each morning. Father Frank Pavone here of Priests for Life. God bless.
Priests for Life has prepared for you a special toolkit so that you can carry out what our bishops call faithful citizenship and make a difference in this year's important election. The kit outlines Church's teachings about the duty to vote and how we make our voting decisions as Catholics. It also clarifies the legal boundaries of which churches can and cannot do, and the much wider range of activities that you can simply do as citizens. The toolkit contains Father Frank's book, Abolishing Abortion, a study guide to the bishop's document, Living the Gospel of Life, guidelines on what churches and organizations can do at election time, a guide to the positions of the political parties on key issues, an election prayer card, and 2 powerful brochures, Voting with a Clear Conscience, and 10 responses to pro-abortion politicians. Now is not the time for apathy. Let's get up and get involved in electing public servants who know the difference between serving the public and killing the public. Order your election toolkit and equip yourself and your friends today. Give us a call at 321-500-1000. Again, let's get involved and get that election toolkit by giving us a call at 321-500-1000. Thank you.
It's a lot of things.
While some of us are choosing pink or blue, others have a completely different choice in mind. Which do you choose? Choose life.
Many pro-life people worked hard to elect President Donald Trump. That hard work has paid off for the pro-life movement and the unborn. Here are just some of the pro-life accomplishments of the president and his administration. Number 10. President Trump has called on Congress to pass key pro-life legislation to protect babies and defund the abortion industry. Number 9. President Trump has filled his administration with strong pro-life people in key positions. Number 8. President Trump has ended the HHS mandate, forcing employers to cover abortion in health insurance. Number 7. President Trump set up new conscience protections for those who refuse to participate in abortions. Number 6. President Trump ended the secrecy about which health insurance plans cover abortion. Number 5. President Trump stopped funding the abortion industry overseas. Number 4. President Trump protected your tax dollars from funding abortion through Title X. Number 3. President Trump gave the states the right to stop funding Planned Parenthood and abortion. Number 2. President Trump appointed 2 pro-life Supreme Court justices and dozens of other pro-life federal judges. And the number one thing, the first and greatest thing that President Trump did for the pro-life movement was to keep Hillary Clinton out of the White House. To all of you who voted for President Trump in 2016, congratulations. Your vote paid off. But be sure to get out and vote again this 2018 midterm election so that the president has a strong pro-life Congress to enable him to continue winning more victories for the cause of life.
Hello, I'm Evangelist Alveda King. I'm blessed to work with Priests for Life, one of the largest and most visible pro-life ministries in the world. Our whole team relies on your financial support to be able to do our work, produce our programs, and travel the world to advocate for the unborn. May I ask you to support us generously? Go today to prolifedonation.org and give as generous a gift as you can. We appreciate it and will pray for you each day.